Hey Bulldog fans, Robbie Falk here from On 3 Sports and Maroon and White Daily. Thank you for tuning in for another Talkin Dawgs here. We're not going live today, but with the holidays winding down, New Year's coming around, I wanted to give you guys one last video before we get into 2025 to kind of talk about where things are for Mississippi State, the transfer portal with the football program, even some basketball as we wind down 2024. It's been a great year. I thank all you guys for all the support that you've put in with this YouTube channel, with our Maroon and White Daily website. It's been a fantastic year. So let's talk about what Mississippi State has done to this point. I think that the Bulldogs have kind of weathered all the bad news. There might be some coming at some point, I'm sure, but to this point, it looks like the massive wave of bad news that came for State has kind of passed. And the Bulldogs are now starting to kind of pick themselves up, and they're starting to have some acquisitions that have moved them in the right direction. There was a time period where things were really rough for State. They lost Mario Craver, they lost Michael Van Buren, they lost Kevin Coleman. Jackson Arnold decided to go to Auburn instead of Mississippi State. It was just a rough few weeks there for the Bulldogs, but we started to see things really kind of transpire in a good way for him. Luke Kromenhawk from Florida State, the four-star quarterback, one of the top portal quarterbacks out there, decides to come to Mississippi State. Picked up some good linebackers in Darian Gullett from Texas and Jalen Smith from Tennessee, who at the time was one of the state's best pickups there. And then Jere Bledsoe, defensive tackle, gives them a little more depth in the middle. On the defensive line. They had a big run on Sunday before Christmas with two centers in Kobe Keenum from Kentucky, Carson Lee from Eastern Michigan, and then you got a pass rusher in Malik Celia, who actually played and did some good things at Texas A&M. I think he adds a nice pass rush for the Bulldogs. And then you had the big news, Christmas Eve, pretty big Christmas gift for Jeff Lebby and Anthony Tucker in the offense, as they pick up Fluff Bothwell, who's one of the top running backs in the portal at the time. A guy that rushed for nearly 1,000 yards at South Alabama this year as a freshman, went virtually unknown coming out of high school, had a huge season for South Alabama, and Mississippi State was able to win a big battle there against Ole Miss for Fluff Bothwell as they bring him into this offense. And you have a tremendous backfield if things transpire how I think they can, with the new junior college ruling out there that Mississippi State and teams around the country are going to be able to have players back that have a year of eligibility due to that junior college ruling until that situation gets fixed. Davon Booth is still very much a possibility to return to Mississippi State's backfield. That gives you a tremendous 1-2 punch there with Fluff Bothwell and Davon Booth. And on top of that, you got Johnny Daniels in the backfield. You have Xavier Gayton, a guy that had some flash this year as a true freshman. He's a player that could factor in at some point. That's four really, really talented running backs in Mississippi State's backfield, and I think a significantly better backfield than what you had this year, and arguably one of the best that you've had in a very long time. When you look at the talent there and the depth that you have at running back, they were kind of scrambling to make some things happen in the offseason last year. This offseason, I think you can really build around that running back room, and that can be the strength of your offense, with Fluff Bothwell, Davon Booth, and Johnny Daniels being a three-headed monster for Mississippi State. I think that really makes your offense go. It takes some pressure off of your passing attack, I think, as well, and we'll see how things transpire. We're going to be really interesting to see what this offense looks like early in 2025, and there's still some pieces there that have to be figured out, because Mississippi State still needs to get 2 or 3 wide receivers to add to that room that can really bolster that offense. Right now, I don't think it's an offense that's super exciting at the wide receiver position, because you just don't have a lot of proven talent there. Now, they have some guys that they're in the mix for. Squirrel White from Tennessee, I think, is a player that Mississippi State will be a factor in his recruitment, and we'll see what his return interest is. But we expect him to take a visit to Mississippi State in the coming days when the dead period ends. Cam Vaughn, a wide receiver from Jacksonville State's another player that they're after. After a kid from Eastern Michigan, they're after a couple other guys too. So some irons in the fire there, but there's work to do at the receiver position. But at running back, Mississippi State looks to be in great shape. I think top half of the league running back group at this point, because you're bringing back a guy, Davon Booth, who, had he started stronger this year, is a 1,000-yard rusher. But the way he ended the season really gives you some excitement going into 2025, knowing that there's a very good possibility that he could return and be a part of that. Adding that with another 800-plus yard rusher in Fluff Bothwell, there's a lot to be excited about there for the Bulldogs. And then at quarterback, you have Blake Shapen, who's returning. If he is healthy, you got to feel good about him. But the question will be, how healthy is Blake Shapen going to be? I think he will be 100% going into the spring, or at least close to it. Maybe not from a conditioning standpoint, but the shoulder should be good to go. And if you're able to get that out of him all season long, it could be a very good season offensively for the Bulldogs. I think the season plays out a little bit different offensively if Blake Shapen's in the mix this year, because the running attack started to get going. I think that offense looked different early on in the season because they just didn't have the running game going, but that group started to mesh. I think if you have that in place this year, it could be a good year. Moving back to the defensive side, State landed 3 more defensive linemen over the last few days. Darren Reed from Auburn, who has not really done anything for Auburn in his first 2 years, but the talent is there. He was a mid-4-star guy coming out of high school. Just about everybody in the country was after this kid. Committed to Auburn. His first 2 years doesn't have a tackle, but I think you see something in him that it could come together. The good news for Mississippi State is I think they have enough people that they're going to have in the mix. It's not like you're having to rely on him to hit here, but if he does hit, you have a very high ceiling player in Darren Reed, and we'll see how that goes. Now, 2 players that I expect will be in the mix for starting positions are Rasheem Thomas from Northern Illinois and Will Whitson from Coastal Carolina. And both of these guys are the latest additions out of the transfer portal, and I think 2 of the biggest pickups out of the portal for David Turner for sure. And David Turner, as we will talk about, now moving to interior defensive lineman, and we'll have more on that here shortly. But Rasheem Thomas, a player with nearly 200 tackles at defensive end during his time in Northern Illinois, he's got 1 season remaining. I think this was a huge pickup. Would not shock me to see this guy being your starting defensive lineman. I think he has all the potential. Played 5 years at Northern Illinois and was incredibly productive. Would have had a huge season this year, but he got injured, had his season end prematurely. And that actually works out well for Mississippi State because it gives them another season. So now you have a guy that's incredibly productive in Division I that is going to be added to the mix here, and I think it is going to be in position to start. I think he helps you tremendously in his 1 year here. And then Will Whitson, kind of similar situation, played just 4 games, but a guy that can get after the quarterback. I think he had 6 sacks in 2 years. I'll check that. 5 sacks in 2 years, but 17 ball games. So, I think this is a really good hire, a really good pickup for Mississippi State as well to get Will Whitson in there. And now you're adding pieces to the mix where you don't just have where you're relying on one guy. You have several guys that can come in off the bench and give you production. That's what Mississippi State's been missing. They've been missing pass rush, and they've been missing depth. And I think that's what they're adding out of the transfer portal to go along with some pieces that I still think can be good for the Bulldogs this year that have been here. They just haven't really been able to put it together. And if you're able to get that production up front next year, it changes the entire defense. The linebackers are playing better. The cornerbacks and the safeties don't have as much pressure on them to make plays down the field and to cover for a long time. Pass rush dictates the entire defense. That's been my message since the beginning of the year, and it works everywhere. If you have a pass rush, your entire defense feels those effects, and vice versa. So I think David Turner has done a solid job. There's still some pieces to add to the mix. Obviously, I think that if you can get another really good defensive tackle, that you're in a really good spot there. But I haven't seen a ton of those guys either out there. So, we'll see what Mississippi State's able to do to get in the mix there. But as far as pass rush, I mean, they're in a pretty good spot. McQueese Grace is an interesting target that Mississippi State's had. Probably the hottest edge rusher on the market right now, or up there. A guy from South Dakota. 68 tackles last year, 17 tackles for loss, and 9.5 sacks. It would be very difficult to keep this guy off the field right away. And we've heard he has a very high asking price. In my opinion, I think this is a guy that State needs to go get. Stack as much talent as you possibly can on that defensive line because you've been missing it. And if you get this guy, I think it changes the defense. And you add him to the mix with some of the other guys on the defensive line, this could be a totally different looking defense and could completely go against what we believed would happen in this offseason for Mississippi State. We felt like the money being put in place for the Bulldogs would help. But bringing the entire defensive staff back for the most part, it was going to be tough to sell. But I think they have kind of broken in a little bit. Maybe not to the point where they're getting a ton of difference makers. And a lot of these guys are still guys they're not, you're not having to win a lot of battles against, or guys that haven't really proven it to this point. But a guy like Grace and a guy like Thomas and Whitson and players like that, they do move the needle for you. And that would give you a lot of hope going into next year that Jeff Lebby's plan could come to fruition. It could work with some of these guys at the helm. So we'll see what happens. I expect Grace to visit after the dead period. I know State's going to have a lot of competition for him, but obviously it would be a game changer for Mississippi State if you're able to get him. Moving over to coaching staff, and we talked about that coaching staff and Jeff Lebby wanting to keep some continuity there. But the thing is, he's adding to it. And I think that's the key here is he hasn't just been content with what he had. And that's what it appeared for a couple of weeks. But now it's kind of coming to light. He is making some moves and he is making some changes here. It started on the offensive side of the ball on Sunday. We got the news that Phil Loadholt, the offensive line coach at Colorado, was going to be taking over Mississippi State's offensive line. Cody Kennedy is no longer with the program. That's the only coach to this point that has been separated from Mississippi State. And Loadholt brings to the Bulldogs experience in this offense, a guy that Jeff Lebby, I know, absolutely loves. He wanted to bring Loadholt to his staff last year as a offensive analyst. Instead, Loadholt gets his first opportunity to coach a position group. Deion Sanders hired him at Colorado, and he spent this year there. The numbers up front, and I know I've seen people talking about it, that their offensive line wasn't very good. They were significantly better than Mississippi State. I'll say that. And they weren't great, but he also had a very young and inexperienced offensive line, and he had some good things happen up there too. So I think Jeff Lebby loves this guy. I think he has the continuity with Lebby in this offense, having coached with him at Oklahoma, at Ole Miss, and now it's going to be at Mississippi State. I think he's shown the ability to recruit very early on in his career. He has that year under his belt. So he's not exactly, cutting his teeth here with Mississippi State. So I like this pickup a lot. I think Loadholt has the experience in coaching the offensive line and that he's been an offensive analyst and he's worked with offensive linemen, played in the NFL, and did some really good things at Oklahoma too. So I love this pickup for Mississippi State, and I think it's going to help. On the defensive side of the ball, Mississippi State picks up Vincent Dancy, also from Colorado, a guy that coached on the defensive line at Colorado. He's going to coach Mississippi State's outside linebackers and defensive ends. Now, the edge spot, which is kind of an outside linebacker spot, that was Hutzler's position group. He was coaching the edges and linebackers as a whole. Hutzler is now kind of stepping back and is going to be CEO, play caller, defensive coordinator. He's not coaching a single position group. So Dancy now will coach the outside linebackers, and you'll have David Turner moving to the inside to coach the interior line, which tells me that Mississippi State's going to be running more four-down linemen, maybe a 4-3. We'll see exactly what to do. 4-2-5 is a possibility. I think we will see more four-down linemen because another thing that's really kind of tipped that off is they're just not really going after true nose guards in the portal. We're seeing more true defensive tackles, guys that are going to be running. They'll be running a two-man interior line. It really appears that way, at least to me. And it just doesn't make any sense for David Turner to coach one guy, basically, a nose guard or nose tackle. He's going to be coaching defensive tackles. So I think that kind of gives you a glimpse of what could be on the way for Mississippi State. I would be surprised if they run a ton of three-man front next season. I think we will start to see a lot more four-down linemen as we get into 2025. Also, another addition, Paul Rhodes, a longtime defensive coordinator. He was a head coach at Iowa State for several years. Ton of experience, 35 years of experience for Paul Rhodes, coming to Mississippi State to be a senior defensive analyst for Coleman Hutzler to kind of help out with the defense. I think this is a fantastic move by Jeff Lebby. A lot of schools are doing this now, bringing in former defensive coordinators, head coaches to play the part of an analyst to kind of help out coaching staffs. I love this. I would like to see more of this on both sides of the ball, and I think you will see that. I think you'll see some more hires there in that regard. Spend some money on your staff. Get some experienced guys in there to help. It's helped a lot of teams along the way. Alabama has won national championships thanks in large part to adding people like that to the mix. The more people you can get into a room that have been there, that have done that, the better. And I think Paul Rhodes helps you. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He's been a successful defensive coordinator. Didn't have a great record at Iowa State, but he's been in that chair. He was in that chair for 5 or 6 years. He can give some knowledge that you can't get a lot of places. So I love this. He's kind of been all over. I mean, he was even with Mark Hudspeth at Gulf Shores on 2 different occasions the last couple of years, coaching high school football. So this guy has seen it all. He's done it all. This is a great pickup for Mississippi State to just add to that defensive unit, to try to change some things there and make it a group that can compete in the SEC and can bring Mississippi State out of the cellar. That's where they are right now. So I think right now the offseason has been really positive for Mississippi State. I don't know what that translates into as far as wins and losses next year because the schedule is so difficult. But I think there's no question about it. Mississippi State has gotten better as a team. And there's still more moves to be made. They have to get more cornerbacks in there. They have to get wide receivers. And they really probably need another offensive tackle. But other than that, I think this has been a really good offseason with more work to be done in the coming weeks. And we'll have all that for you. Real quickly, just the conference schedules on the way for basketball, both the men and women. They come into conference season with a 25-2 record combined. This has been a really impressive start for both of these two teams. Best start for the women since 2018, and the men have started with 1 loss a couple of times, but this is a team that I think looks a little bit different than they have in years past. This looks like one of the better teams Mississippi State has had in the last decade. And now they got to put it into play in an extremely tough SEC. It's an SEC that, I could see Mississippi State finishing with 8 or 9 wins and at or around 500 in the league and being like a 3 seed. That's how good this league is this year. I think the metrics are going to be that good for Mississippi State that if they finish with 8 or 9, they're in the NCAA tournament and have a very good seed. So that's kind of where that is. The women, very similar. I think the SEC is going to be very strong. If they win 8 or 9 games, they're unquestionably in the NCAA tournament, and we'll see where their seeding is, but I think they would be safely in at that point. But they have a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. Number 16, Kentucky on the road. Number 9, Oklahoma at home. And then you have to go to, you come back home and play to South Carolina at home, number 2, and then number 9, Oklahoma. So it is it's a gauntlet for the men. They're starting off with South Carolina on Saturday at the Hump. I expect a huge crowd at the Hump on Saturday. Should be a really good game. Got Vanderbilt on the road. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun and exciting times ahead. So it's been busy, folks, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. It's only going to pick up here the coming days with the transfer portal ramping right back up. SEC basketball right around the corner. And we will have it all covered for you at Maroon and White Daily. So if you're not at Maroon and White Daily, Come check us out today. We've had a tremendous year. The year has been absolutely incredible. We're 1 year removed from myself joining Paul Jones at Maroon and White Daily, and the numbers have been great. We've had incredible message board activity, the best message board in the business at Mississippi State. You got to come check us out. We got transfer portal news on a daily basis. We love basketball over there, so basketball talk all the time. Baseball is right around the corner. It is the one-stop shop for you. If you're a Mississippi State fan, come check us out today, maroonandwhitedaily.com. We would love to have you. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe today. You get updates like this. We have live chats for fans to come in and interact with me, answer your questions, have any kind of comments, whatever. We have press conferences on there, media availabilities, everything right there at this channel, Maroon and White Daily on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. Again, thank you so much for all of the support that you've given our site, our network this year, and for this YouTube channel as well. I cannot thank you enough. I wish everybody a happy new year. Hope you have a blessed 2025. Cannot wait for what's ahead this season. Come check us out at Maroon and White Daily and have a happy new year.